And we're back at full strength, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for another episode of The Good, The Bad, and The Encyclopedia. And you know we're all going to be talking about... No, I didn't pick up an accent while I was in Canada, but The Encyclopedia, I'm back. And I'm happy to have, once again, the full trio here. We have The Good, the Reverend Jason Todd.
I want to say hello, but I can't stop looking at that hat. And I want to say good, positive things, but I can't stop looking at that hat.
Hey, according to our brother podcast, the OTBS, I went to the stadium with the cheapest hot dog in Major League Baseball.
There.
I wouldn't know because I didn't buy the cheap one. I bought the full one.
It's probably still cheaper.
All right, and then the guy who really gave me a look of disgust when he saw me on Sunday when I got back from my trip, because part of it being that he's evil, he is the devil's advocate, Rob Finn.
No different than the other look of scorn I give you, but I gave you an additional look of scorn because you are wearing my hat.
It's temporary. I'm still in character since I just got back from Canada on Sunday.
And then
So
you
that
should
means
say
you're
you're
gonna
sorry.
Right, and you're going to be
constantly
overly nice
apologize.
during. You're going to be overly nice during the entire podcast, right?
I'm always nice. You're the mean one. I heard you stirring the shit last week.
I'm gonna push that.
I know.
We'll see.
I listened. I know what
We'll
you're
see.
planning. I know what you're planning.
All right. So let's talk about. First of all, I'd like to we have an exclusive from the Encyclopedia because while the Reverend and I watched Money in the Bank on our assorted devices, the Encyclopedia was actually there. So he's going to give us the man on the spot report. So go ahead, kick us off. Where were you sitting? Anything else you want to share with us while you were there that we didn't see on TV? I'd love to hear.
That I can do. First off, I'm going to say that this was probably one of the best crowds I've been with as far as everyone being into the show and enjoying everything and taking it for what it is, for the most part. Jason and Rob, you've been with me at times where you got some obnoxious asshole sitting in front of you or behind you that you want to punch in the face by the end of that.
Sometimes I was that guy. So go ahead. Yeah.
Not when I've been with you.
No.
Now, if it was Yankee Mets game, yeah.
Well, come on.
That's
You almost
necessary.
when you
Well,
buy the
that's-
ticket, it says on the back you need to mock the Mets as often as you can.
Yeah, we should have a separate episode on Rob's experience insulting the Mets in person, but we'll do that another time. So, I was saying this off the top of my head. It was section 107, like row 21. So I was on the bottom bowl. I was behind the card cam, so I doubt I was on TV, and I really don't care. But it was a lot of fun. The people were all great. The only issue I had with any fans was there was these row of guys that behind me. And I'll be honest, my seats after the conversion rate were probably about 325, 330 American. These guys showed up an hour late, which if you're paying that kind of money, I'm showing up on time. Be that as it may. And when Tama Tonga tagged in the match, I hear one of them going, "Who the hell is this guy? I don't know who this guy is." And I kind of looked over at him and I was like, "By any chance, do you know who Haku is?" I don't know, man. I only became a fan in 2002. And I was like, "Okay, don't worry
You should
about
still know who Haku is.
Right,
I feel
and I
like
was
you
like, all
still
right.
hear that name a
I
lot.
was gonna say Haku is a legend. So
it." Yeah, I wanted to say something and I was like, "All right, these guys are drunk, so I'm not going to bother." I mean, they were talking about how shit-faced they were going to get anyways, but they weren't really that annoying. It was just more of an eye rolling, like, "Oh, it's all right." So we got the young drunks. It was the fact that you've been watching since 2002. Supposedly, you've been a big fan since 2002.
Yeah.
Have you not been not watching the last 3 or 4 months?
the young drunks, do they wrestle in AEW?
Oh boy. But having not watched the broadcast, how did it come across with Chelsea's green entrance? Because on my side, that place went ballistic for her.
Oh,
Yeah.
we heard it.
Yep.
Definitely picked it up. And if I remember correctly, they even noted that with commentary. Like they didn't.
Okay.
Mhm.
Commentary's been very good. They did not ignore crowd reactions to people.
Yeah. From an eyewitness perspective, in the world heavyweight, the men's world heavyweight title match, From the angle I was on, saw the referee didn't count 3 on Damian Priest. I couldn't tell if he had gotten his shoulder up on the other side because of where I was angled with, but it looked like nobody in our section thought. We all thought there was probably a screw up, but because of the angle we were on,
that was a botch.
Yeah. Which and Triple H, I believe, discussed it during the press conference. So
he did make a little mention of it, but yeah, he didn't throw anyone under the bus. To be fair.
Yeah, that's these things happen. I fully support Jim Cornette in saying you gotta treat it as a shoot, and that 3 count should have happened. And then I don't know what that means for Drew McIntyre and Punk. Frankly, McIntyre wasn't supposed to walk out with the championship anyway. So if the audible was Punk got him disqualified or he won on a DQ, so be it.
Yeah.
It's amazing in a show that's completely planned out, they don't have things like that planned out.
Well, because it wasn't supposed to happen.
Right, but I mean, if there should be a contingency plan in place. If you count 3, you don't see your shoulder come up, you follow through. We'll deal with it.
Yeah, I think they know that though, and I think the ref froze. I really think that's what happened. From what I read, they were expecting Drew's music was supposed to be what broke up the count,
which is weak.
It didn't happen, would be weak.
That's weak sauce.
But I just think, and I even texted you that day. I thought Priest got knocked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened. Priest was out of it. He didn't kick out.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a 3 count. And when the referee didn't count, it was like I was like, oh man. I even rewound it to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Yeah.
And it was a 3 count. They should have rolled with it.
It's not the first time I've seen this happen, or any of us have seen this happen
several times.
It happens.
Okay. And following up on that, I read somewhere that I believe this was I'm probably going to get the first name. I think his name is Rod Zapata was the referee. And apparently he's the same referee that fucked up the Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair main event. And apparently he got ruined big time for that one and actually got fined. Because if you remember, Ronda's shoulder was up between the 1 and the 2 count, and he kept counting. Apparently no heat on him on there. I don't want to get too long-winded here because I know I tend to do that. The Scotiabank Arena was a nice enough arena. The disappointment I had there was the entire concourse was being renovated. So that kind of sucked because you were walking through tarps. I did walk by during the pre-show as they were filming. I think I sent you guys the video of me. I literally went up an escalator just to get that angle because there was just way too many people, but it was of Jackie Redmond, Big E, and Wade Barrett. Had I known they were going to do more after the show, I probably would have walked over to that because I was sitting like a couple sections over from that. Had no idea any of that was going to happen because usually they just go straight to the press conference. My hotel room was literally a block from the arena. So I walked out at 10:20. I was back in my hotel room at 10:25. That's how close I was. As far as anything you didn't see, after they went off the air, Kevin Owens did get on the microphone. And he thanked everybody for helping him in what was honestly the hardest week of his life. He praised Orton and Cody for being there for him. I'm sure you guys know the story about his mom. Apparently she's still fighting, and I might be getting this. I believe it was on SmackDown. He referred to that maybe he shouldn't be there, or am I not? Am I getting that mixed up?
He did talk about that, and he said that the one thing he couldn't do was not be there because she would kick his ass.
Yeah. Okay. So he did say that she's still fighting. He was going to go back basically to her, if I remember the details correctly. But he did thank everybody there for being so supportive in what was absolutely probably the hardest week in his life. He went that far. I don't think there's been any news since. Hopefully. We know his real name is Kevin Steen. Hopefully his mom, Mrs. Steen, hopefully she's doing better. Hopefully we get good news soon. Been surprised there hasn't been any update. I know he tries to be a private person when it comes to his family, but I'm sure all of us on this podcast wish her well and hope that she recovers.
If it helps, I haven't seen her yet. So.
Okay. Oh, all right then. Took me a second. I was like, what is that supposed to mean? Oh, wait.
Well, I think Jason got it. You were a little slow in the draw there. But
yeah.
I don't think you're supposed to be seeing her either. To be fair, I don't think you're supposed to.
Hey, look.
You know, we don't know.
It's
We
We don't know.
rough.
She
Man.
left.
It
It's
was
a
just
rough
a joke.
thing to deal with.
It was just
Yeah,
a
no, of
joke.
course.
Yeah,
All good to Mrs. Steen. Please get well.
Yes.
Yeah. I did miss Kathy Kelly and Chelsea Green being outside of the CN Tower, which is right next to Rogers Center, probably by a few hours, which would have really been. I think my wife would have been embarrassed for me if I saw them, because I think they're both awesome, especially Kathy Kelly. I got something. I got something for her. No, the Money in the Bank store that they were hyping throughout the week. What? What?
I said what?
What? The Money in the
You
Bank
said you had
store.
something for them. I said what?
Yeah, well, the Money in the Bank store. Basically what you saw in those video clips, that was about it. It was really small. They were hyping this thing up to be something there. I've been to WrestleMania, the superstores there. I'm sure you guys have been there from time to time. This thing was not that big. It wasn't anything to really go home about. They had a bunch of shirts. There were some exclusive to the event. They had two interesting briefcases. The one that most people saw was the blue one, for Toronto. There was another one that was selling for a lot more, and it was actually the briefcase what looked like the Canadian Maple Leaf, and it was like almost double the price.
How much is a briefcase?
The blue one, I believe, was going. It was either I think it was 250 or 300. And then the Canadian Maple Leaf one, which I didn't see too many people buying, was about 500. They did have, I think,
Canadian.
Yeah, which isn't terrible.
Like $38.
Yeah.
$38.
Well, and my wife was with me, and she said,
"You get change."
Yeah. So my wife was with me, and she goes, "What would people do with the briefcase?" I said, "Display it." And she was like,
"Use it as a weapon."
Yeah, right. But she was like, "But what do you mean display it?" And I said, "Honey, don't you collect?" And she collects these model horses. They're Breyer horses, and she's got curio cabinets filled of these things. I said, "Think of it that way." Oh, okay.
If I were you, and I
was like, "Don't worry, I'm not buying one. I'm a title
I would
belt."
put my work stuff in it and bring it to work.
Let me ask you a question, because they even did this on WWE.com. They ran this question: if you could cash in the briefcase on anything, what would you cash it in for?
I'm gonna end up divorced if I say it. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not answering that question.
Kathy Kelly, no.
This is recorded. I'm not answering that.
Kathy Kelly, no.
Let's keep it to things, not
all of people. I'm gonna go onto Instagram and see that she blocked my ass. One of so they had like 3 or 4 different T-shirts specifically designed for Money in the Bank. They had a bottle opener, which my wife actually suggested I should have gotten for our former co-host Stevie G. They had shot glasses. They had pint glasses. But the one thing I went for was this shirt I'm wearing right now. This is the exclusive Cody Rhodes Toronto Maple Leaf smash up. So I figured let me get something that would be probably not available in too many places. Unfortunately, it didn't work too well for Cody because he lost. But
do they sell title belts there?
They had some, yeah.
And what were the prices on those? Just out of curiosity.
I saw. There were.
$100?
It was 600 to 700 Canadian, if I remember correctly. There was one that was going for 1,000 Canadian. I forget which one, but I think it was more. I think it wasn't considered a replica. I think it was considered an authentic. Yeah, that was one thing. I saw a few title belts, not that many. And then the day I left, I wore my Bret the Hitman Hart T-shirt, and this security guard, as I'm going through, puts his hand up, and he's just like, "The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be." And I looked at it, I was like, "Oh, that was pretty good."
That's Mercedes Moné, I thought.
Right. And then
did that on Dynamite this week. If you hadn't seen it,
I hadn't. I'm still playing catch up.
She
so
threw that out there to a chorus of boos. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I guess she's going to dive into the heel side of things. And then the next security guard said, "It's too bad you weren't here a half hour ago. First, Jey Uso came through, and then he said, and Cody Rhodes came through." And I looked at him, and I was like, "How? Wait, Cody Rhodes?" But I literally, the night before the event, actually SmackDown had just finished airing, and I was walking by the arena with my wife, and she was actually willing to wait, but security was being a bunch of assholes. Cody Rhodes' bus was outside the arena. So I said, "But I saw Cody's bus." And he was like, Yeah, that's a fad. They literally take that logo, slap it onto a bus, and it's a rental. It was like if when he's going long distances, he's not taking that bus, he's still flying. I was like, oh, okay. So when I got in the Toronto terminal, I was kind of looking around like, where's the flight to Atlanta? It's probably already left. Never mind. But yeah, it was the first time I went to an international show. I had an absolute blast, and I think that's something that had been honestly missing when we went to Dynamite. Jay, I know we had a good time, but it felt like something was missing there.
Felt like other than fans, yes.
Yeah,
There was.
I mean,
Yeah, I wonder.
I mean, like my previous WWE event was the Extreme Rules where Bray Wyatt first returned. In the unfortunately the last version of him we saw. So the Triple H era with pay-per-views, I am all in for making the effort to go to those, even internationally. And I did have two college friends that reached out to me a couple months ago about going to WrestleMania in Vegas, and I'm really considering it now. During the Vince era, and I think you guys know, like prime example, Backlash was at the Prudential Center, which I think all three of us can spit and we're there. I know I didn't even bring it up to Rob. I didn't go. And honestly, if I had gone, as soon as Roman Reigns came out for that match with Samoa Joe, I would have walked out. And I heard from people that I'm friends with that went to that show that did exactly that. As soon as that main event started, people were actually walking out. So I think I feel like the Triple H pay-per-view era is getting obviously a lot more interest. We know ticket sales have been great for them. And I think that's something that was missing for me for a while. And I started migrating more over to AEW shows. And look, don't get me wrong, AEW does a really good show. While the shows are not perfect and we knock on it left and right, you will at least going away say you had a good time. You weren't necessarily guaranteed that with WWE, so I got very selective about the shows I went to. I know Rob did as well. Right, Jay? I've only known you for so long, so I'm assuming.
Yeah, no. There was, maybe the most fun I ever had at any of the WWE events, and it was all pay-per-views at that point. Like I have never been to a PLE live, but I was at SummerSlam 02. I guess
I think all of us were, and we didn't know each other.
We were all there. We didn't know it at the time, but we were all there. And then I think it was Survivor Series later that year. And
okay.
You couldn't with those cards. You couldn't not have a good time. But then I went to shows later on, and even then, it was starting to get into that phase where it felt hyper curated, if it makes sense when I say that. Like it just felt like so. I don't know, just not as much fun. And that's the easiest way to say it. But even with the AEW shows, and I know you've told me at that location, at that arena, they never give you the really good Dynamite episode. And it's true. Even then, it was still fun. Like,
yeah,
it was relaxed. People were enjoying themselves. So,
oh, I know you were enjoying yourself. I forget whose ass you were staring at half the time when somebody was.
That
wrestling.
Wasn't the most impressive
MJF.
thing that happened. Well, he only gave.
We didn't get MJF. But he had just lost the belt.
Yeah.
Good one though.
He only gave a quick run in, but did he run? No. It was the biggest thing that stood out was that women's match, and I think it was Mariah May and Queen Aminata, and everybody was like, "They can wrestle. Why don't you show them on TV?"
Right, because didn't they have a commercial break like for half
did.
the damn match?
And I remember, Rob, you mentioned it. It didn't really come across during the picture-in-picture as good as it was in person. And I was like, maybe the show is better.
Even with picture-in-picture, I generally end up either looking away or fast-forwarding.
Yeah.
Because I just don't care. I want the sound. I want the experience. So
the only picture-in-picture thing they did really well for me was the silent films.
Those
from
were
Tony Storm.
With Tony Storm.
Or Sammy Guevara with the notes.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes, I did.
So Anthony.
Yeah, good stuff.
Any other thoughts on Money in the Bank?
No, I thought it was I really thought it was a really great show. I know a lot of people said it was mid. I don't agree. I know a lot of people were turned off by the use of the men's Money in the Bank and throwing it away in the same night. For storyline progression, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I would rather they had given it to someone else. But go ahead.
Well, let's talk about that. First of all, the standings.
Mhm.
I have a point of contention with you.
Okay.
We all went. The good went 3-2. The bad went 3-2, and then when we picked the Intercontinental title, you said Sammy by DQ or countout. So now, but you made it specific. So to me, I counted that as like a tie. Like you didn't get a win on that one because you were more specific than the rest. So it's like a push.
Oh, that's interesting contention.
So I'm curious to what the good Reverend thinks about that. If like, he can make a ruling on this one since we're at opposite ends of the spectrum here. I'm just curious what your thoughts.
There's no opposite end for me. You guys do whatever you want. I don't care enough. I'm too far behind to give a shit.
I'm just busting your balls. I really don't care, and I know I'm way ahead.
So I know, and I'm not.
I just thought it was funny.
And you're not getting the reaction you wanted out of me. I don't
technically, myself and the encyclopedia are the proverbial crabs in a bucket right now because we're both. Like if I say no, don't count it. I'm just trying to climb over him to get out. Yeah, I don't know. I thought about that. It was a very specific thing, but I mean, he was still.
It was. Let me just give you my thought process behind it. I'll give you my thought process behind it, and you could rule it whatever you want. First off, Stevie G did this several times, and it was more of a back then. It was more of a all bonus points thing, which I was like, okay, whatever. If you get it, we'll give you bonus points. The reason why I put it there, and I probably should have highlighted that and do with this what you will. I was actually trying to give, because if I was on the show, this is what I would have said. I was trying to share with you the reason why I was picking Sammy, because I thought for sure everybody would thought I was nuts and would have picked Braun Breaker. So that's the only reason why I put that there. That was my background as to why I was picking him, because I thought for sure you both were picking Braun.
Well, to add to that, we both were kind of in agreement with you that we thought there were going to be some kind of shenanigans, but we didn't put it on a sheet.
Yeah, but I know. I heard what you guys said.
So
you guys didn't put it on paper. You didn't put it on
right.
pen
I'm
paper.
busting your balls. I mean, it doesn't matter in the end. It's just I thought it was funny because when I looked at it, I'm like, he actually was very specific in what he thought was going to happen. That's technically not right. So,
who you will.
I mean, like I said, it doesn't really matter. I mean,
give it to him.
So we'll leave it there. Oh, like I said,
Okay, well,
it's like a dropper in the ocean. I mean, what's the difference?
All right, if you're going to give it to me, then it should say 4-1, shouldn't it? Just saying.
If you want to fix it, go right ahead.
Okay. The one thing I did, and I don't know why I was convinced of this, and I listened to the podcast after the fact, but I went and looked at your picks before I walked into the arena that night. I don't know why, Rob. I thought for sure you would pick Drew McIntyre for that match. I don't know why I thought that.
Why?
Because I think you thought there was a possibility that Drew, this was it when Drew won it. When Drew won the Money in the Bank, I said out loud, I was like, he's cashing in tonight. He said it a few weeks ago, and the guy's not lying lately. So I knew he was cashing in.
But I mean, here's my thought process on that.
Okay.
I thought they got it. Like they keep calling Jey Uso main event Jey Uso, yet he wins nothing. So throw him a bone, let him win Money in the Bank. He doesn't have to win the title, and McIntyre really doesn't need the rub. He and Punk are already, like, to me they're kind of like piling on. Like they didn't need to do that. To me it was already at a very high level. So to me it when I saw that, I'm like, well, Punk's going to come out and interfere. It's obvious. McIntyre's not walking away with the title. I didn't feel like they needed to do that. So I thought, let's give Jey Uso something to do, because how often you keep calling this man main event when he doesn't win anything? So I figured either they're going to give him the Intercontinental belt at some point, or they're going to let him win Money in the Bank, because then at least he has something to walk around with. Because right now, the only thing he does is the yeet, the punch, and the kick. And I'm like, how often? I'm shocked that people are still following him as closely as they are, because he doesn't win anything.
So I'm going to embarrass myself for a little bit. When Jey Uso came out,
dude,
I was with it with everybody doing the yeet and everything, and I had my camera up with the video mode. And as his entrance was done, I looked and realized I never hit the record button. I felt really stupid. I even texted
You should be proud
Jay.
of yourself that you didn't record that. That's embarrassing.
Let me tell you, but honestly, I felt like the Yeet was like losing popularity, but it was not losing popularity in Toronto. That place was all in on it, and I'm starting to buy into Jey Uso. And based on what you're saying, there's two things. First off, Punk specifically said Drew McIntyre would never be world champion again. Mm-hmm. Well, how else are you going to get Drew McIntyre to get another title shot? That was the only way left. So I didn't have a problem with that. I know some people felt, well, you threw the money in the bank away for whatever,
an angle that didn't need it. That already that is already nuclear hot.
But the problem is the second they went there and Punk said, he will not win the championship with me. I think they had to get there at some point. So I get
what you're saying, but we all picked Jey Uso anyway. Why did you pick Jey Uso?
Because I didn't think they were going to go there. I really didn't. I thought, if anything, I thought Punk was going to cost Drew McIntyre the Money in the Bank match. That's where I thought he was going to come.
We talked about that a little bit too. Yes,
that's what I thought.
That would have made sense to me as well.
I mean, and the other thing is, and we've been saying this for years, and this is more a Vince issue. But how many years do we have a Money in the Bank winner that all of a sudden got thrown to the side for several months and then out of the blue reappeared? And most of the time went on a massive losing streak and then won the championship out of the blue. And we were like, so I'm supposed to believe this guy's going to be able to hold the championship? So rather than them have somebody win Money in the Bank and then it becomes an afterthought, all right, fine. Get it out of the way now. Because let me tell you something. On the women's side, Tiffany Stratton's going to bling the shit out of that thing. And she's been saying she was going to do it if she won. And she's going to have a lot of fun with it. I think what's really going to be interesting, and they already set that dynamic up. I'm going to call it right now. I think all three of us are picking Nia Jax to beat Bayley for the belt at SummerSlam. And Nia and Tiffany have some sort of thing going right now. Mm-hmm. So how funny is that going to be? Queen Nia Jax, the women's champion, with the Money in the Bank holder as her sidekick.
It's true. It's going to be an interesting dynamic with them, because also you don't want to cash in on Nia Jax at the wrong time. Mm-hmm. So now we'll get to find out how devious Tiffany Stratton can be and how calculating she can be, because she's not going to do it when she's, face to face.
Rob is getting itchy. Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was going to say, while we're talking about the ladies match, mm-hmm. and again, from your perspective being there, it was really like a tale of two matches. Mm-hmm. Because the first 5 minutes, there were so many botches.
Zoe Stark?
There were several. It was not even just her. There was a couple. And at one point, I went like this. I went, oh, shit. Like, somebody's getting hurt.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't enjoying the match because I'm like, this is, like, getting dangerous now. Like, somebody should come out and stop this and be like, okay, let's start over again and let's take it down a notch. I don't know what was wrong with them. Mm-hmm. They were all out of sync. It all looked very botchy and dangerous. And then all of a sudden, at like the 5-minute mark, they seemed to all figure it out.
What the turning point was.
A really good match. But that first 5 minutes was really scary. And I was like, I'm really surprised coming out of that match somebody wasn't hurt. Like, they were all pretty much on Raw. Zoe Stark and in EO, I think we're all on Raw the following night. Still okay. And I was like, I can't believe that. Especially Zoe Stark. She looked like she got hit like 3 or 4 times, where at any point she could have been on the shelf. Mm. So I don't know how I feel about that match, because the first 5 minutes really, I didn't enjoy it. And then all of a sudden, as the match went on, I was like, wow, okay, oh, that's a pretty good spot. Oh, they seem to have fixed whatever was wrong. Did they sacrifice a goat or pray to the gods? I don't know what they did. They fixed it somehow. But I still think back to those first 5 minutes, and I'm like, man, they were like this close to somebody really getting badly injured. So first of all, I'd like to know what the encyclopedia saw from his side, because he was there. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the good Reverend can jump in and throw his piece in. But
I noticed Zoe Stark totally missing Lyra Valkyria. I thought Zoe. I'll be honest. I don't think Zoe belonged in this match. I forget who else she was in the triple threat with for that spot, but she was the last one of the three. I thought that was going to win that one, if I remember correctly. I think so. I don't know what it is about Zoe Stark they love so much. I personally don't get it, and I don't think the fans are buying into it. But maybe this new partnership with her, Shayna Baszler, and now Sonya Deville, maybe they'll help her. I don't know, because they also try to give her the
She makes a lot of mistakes. Like her matches, she usually misses a move per match.
Yeah, I think they rushed her to the main roster, and that sometimes you learn on the main roster. I thought Io Sky. I don't know if this came across on the broadcast, but as Tiffany was grabbing the briefcase and was even on the ladder celebrating, Io Sky was at the bottom of the ladder, like wailing and screaming, like she was upset. And I was like, I hope they're showing this on TV, because she freaking made it even better. And and maybe because it was in Canada, maybe because I like her. I liked half the girls in this match. I like Chelsea Green. I like Io Sky. I like Lyra and Valkyria and Tiffany Stratton. So all right, 66% of the match. Chelsea Green, I think, was the MVP in that match, and she didn't really do all that much. She was just entertaining as fuck. And then she took that crazy
Dakota
bump.
Kai and Ivy Nile.
I would have
Dakota Kai and Ivy Nile versus.
I would have had Dakota Kai win that one.
Yeah, Dakota Kai might have made for more interesting dynamic too.
And I know I've been knocking on her for years. And the woman's got talent. But I feel like Naomi was supposed to be the veteran presence leading the thing. And I'm sorry, there's just something about her that she doesn't seem to get the chemistry right in wrestling matches. And she doesn't know how to build a proper match and tell a story. And I don't know what it is. I don't think she'll ever get over that. And I don't know if she did it in TNA.
That.
Okay.
In this match, for this match.
Okay, because there was some stuff in this match that I was like, why is she doing this?
But there were several moments, and I'm gonna take, especially almost after every what's her name? Every flub by Zoe Stark. The next thing that happened was an interaction with Naomi and someone, and they would pull off a move that would get people back in, because I would hear the crowd groan when Zoe Stark would miss something. And then right after she missed and almost knocked herself out with Lyra coming off over the rope, the next sequence was, I think it was Naomi, and it was either Io or it was Tiffany in the corner. And she pulled off a flawless, I'm going to call it a Starship Pain, because that's what it is. It's basically Starship Pain that she does, that same John Morrison move or whatever, onto her opponent on the ladder. And then after another set of flubs, they got her set up between the two ladders, and she fought off two people while doing a split between the ladders and kept one of them from tipping over. And I don't know if you're taking it for granted how difficult it would be to jump from that position. But she did pull off a pretty good move from there that seemed to get people back into it. And then from that point on, the match kept going, and it kept building up and up and up. So, yeah, I get you're not a big fan of hers.
It's the placement. It's the placement of when she's doing this stuff.
Yeah, but she was doing that like as a matter of fact, it was probably perfect placement, because it was a stopper. Things were getting out of hand, and then she'd pull off something well.
All right, so the women's division has their Kofi Kingston for the next several Money in the Bank matches.
I mean, in truth, if she could be their Shelton Benjamin, that might be a bit better. But
that's why I said Kofi Kingston.
Yes.
Her chest is bigger than Kofi's.
What's that? That's not typical.
I said her chest is bigger than Kofi's.
I heard a story, and I think it actually came from him, that was actually because Big Show chopped him or something, and he never healed. I was like, damn.
I don't know if that's what happened, but he's stuck by that story every time.
I've heard that for several years now.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great one. I think he told Big Show that on their podcast one time. He's like, yeah, I had a chest, I had pecs, and then after you, it was over. Yeah. Which match do you think, and maybe I'm thinking about the crowd in person, Which of the two ladder matches do you feel got the bigger reaction or the bigger crowd?
I would say the women's. I think it's simply because of the winner. I don't think anybody in that arena thought Drew McIntyre was winning it. I was literally. I'm going to give you my honest reaction when I realized Drew was about to win it. I actually was screaming out, "No, no, no! Please, no, not him, no!" Because I mean, LA Knight's my favorite in this match. I really like Carmelo Hayes. We know Andrade and Chad Gable were in there just for filler, and Chad Gable, I guess, was going to get some impressive spots, and I would have been fine with Jey Uso winning it. Sentimental favorite for me was LA Knight, but I thought Jey Uso. So when I realized it was definitely going to be Drew, I was disappointed, but I get it. I think the crowd, and I think it came across on the broadcast, and I saw Rob nodding his head. I think the Tiffany Stratton win got a bigger reaction, personally.
You think that win got the reaction it got because of the Chelsea Green spot just before?
I think
no.
The fans were excited that the women could fix what, like, the match was looking like a train wreck, and they fixed it. And I think the fans were impressed that they pulled it together.
I've read
Chelsea did that spot.
Sorry.
And then Tiffy wins. So I think it was a combination.
I could say in the arena, Chelsea was the sentimental favorite, and then Tiffany Stratton was getting the best reaction behind her. So I don't think the Chelsea Green spot necessarily led into the people reacting for Tiffany. I think those were the two winning that match that would have been accepted in that crowd. And I like Lyra Valkyria. It was too soon for her, personally. I know Tiffany Stratton's only got a few months on her, but I just feel like the Tiffany Stratton character's got more adapted to the main roster. I will say, and I wasn't in the arena for any of the other two shows, I will say that first, the women's Money in the Bank, I've read several reviews that people said that was the match of that night. The match of the weekend, I actually think was on the NXT Heatwave. And I think it was that Fatal 4-Way. Specifically the ending, I think, sold it.
Yeah.
And look, I'm sorry. I don't care how bouncy he is. I don't get this super push that Javon Evans is getting. I think he's a little bit too much, and I think he needs to tone it down a little bit. But you know what? He's young. Let him have his fun for now. But that ending was freaking brilliant. The only issue I had with it was how Shawn Spears pulled Trick Williams out. But I think and you saw the reaction to Shawn Spears. I think he was trying to prevent him from making the cover. I don't think it occurred to him what happened. And Rob,
they talked about that on Tuesday.
Okay, Rob.
They brought it back. It was so good.
Rob, I don't know if you saw the ending or heard about the ending. So it was down to Javon Evans got hit with Trick's knee, if I remember correctly, the sequence. And then Trick hit Ethan Page with it, and Ethan Page landed on Javon Evans, and Shawn Spears was ringside, grabbed Trick Williams to prevent him from making the cover and pulled him out. And while that was happening, referee counted 3, and that's how Ethan Page won. But it was so brilliantly done. It literally it didn't look like Ethan Page, for example. You know how many times the spot, and I think I even saw it on SmackDown or maybe in Money in the Bank where someone knows they're slightly out of position, so they roll into position. No,
he landed
perfectly on it after the knee. Like, didn't have to look or anything. He was perfectly set up.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think he did that like eyes wide open as if he was really out.
Yeah.
And he just had this stare, and he didn't move for like a minute after the bell rang.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great ending to that match. So on that, just to connect that though, that next night on NXT, Shawn Spears, there was a promo between all 4 of them again or something, and he looks at Ethan Page and he says, "You're lucky. You should be thanking me, because if my vision hadn't been obscured at the time, I would have realized you were pinning him, and I would never have tripped him up." And I was like, oh, he didn't pretend it didn't happen. I like when they do that, when they acknowledge something that might not make sense without acknowledging it. I'm a big fan of that kind of thing.
That's one of the things I feel like I appreciate now. Like even the fuck up on Money in the Bank, they didn't try to hide behind it. They freaking acknowledged it. And Triple H said, yeah, all right, there was a screw up. These things happen. And I'm not. Nobody's in trouble for this.
And it was a good match up until that point.
Yeah.
They're having a good match. And
I'll say this. I
ahead.
honestly think they are not. I think they have. I think they've ruined Damian Priest's world title reign. I don't think he's every match he's had so far has been shenanigans. He hasn't beaten anybody clean in a while.
And I think they did address that on Raw. They did actually say that, but then I think Damian Priest actually said, "Okay, yeah, none of my wins have been clean. Tell me the other champion can claim." He basically said, "I'm not the only one. Nobody's getting clean wins lately." So at least he acknowledged that. But yeah, I agree with you.
First time world title holder, like you would, and you want to establish him as dominant. He's not. I mean, like I think he's just holding the belt till Gunther gets it.
I'm actually curious about.
And I feel bad for him because he's a good wrestler and he's a good character. They're just not giving him anything to work with. He's involved in all these other angles, and the world title is like not the most important thing.
Do you think it's possible? And hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
He's Gunther is Austrian, right? And after SummerSlam, the next event is Bash in Berlin, and he's gotten a huge reaction in Germany, which Austria has German root. They speak German and what have you. Do you think it's possible that Damian Priest, maybe by shenanigans, like you said, ends up winning at SummerSlam and they save Gunther's title win for Bash in Berlin?
I mean, anything's possible.
I mean, because I think he'll get a big reaction to SummerSlam. I think he'd get an even bigger one in Germany. So I'm curious if they're going to go that route.
Who's the title challenger for SummerSlam then? Because he already said Rollins.
No, it's automatically.
No. I'm saying Damian Priest would retain, but it would be shenanigans.
Oh, it'd be a rematch then.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I got it. I mean,
it's possible.
Sure.
He also acknowledged that you could see Seth Rollins get another title shot because on Raw they said, basically that's off the table. But yeah, it would have to be after sometime after SummerSlam.
Which I found that very interesting.
It was weird.
It was weird. Yes, it was weird because you just had Seth Rollins rip CM Punk about costing him the belt and getting his business.
Yeah.
And then they literally negated it an hour later. So I was like, so does Seth really have a problem?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And Priest being a heel doing a very unheel-like type thing.
We talked about
Flair
that,
would
right?
be like, Ric Flair would be like, you lost, dude. Back of the line.
Yep.
And instead Priest's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. You should get another title shot. No.
It's over.
No, you lost. You're out. I got other guys I need to contend with, and you're not one of them. Beat it. Instead, he was like, yeah, you're right. Let's shake hands. What? No.
Yeah, that was weird.
No.
That goes back to that question I had a few weeks back. It was like, well, what is Damian Priest right now? Because
they already planted the
Judgment Day. He's a heel, but he's not a heel, and he wants to be the good guy, but he wants to be honorable, but he also likes to be Judgment Day.
It's a slow face turn, and Finn Balor's reaction after.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
And what about and while we're on that topic, what about Damage Control? Are they heel or face now?
After the beatdown, I think they're still heel, but it was a weird thing for them to get that beat down.
So then is Zoe and are they heel or are they face?
I think they're heel. I don't think Triple H is worried about face versus heel, or I don't think he's straying away from heel versus heel because technically, as of right now, yes, Damian Priest likely turning face, but right now that's being billed as a heel versus heel matchup. I don't think he cares that much about heel versus heel the way Vince did, and I don't either. I don't have a problem with that. I don't either.
Right? You're the champion. You fight the best guy, not whether he's a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I wouldn't be doing heel versus heel necessarily at SummerSlam unless you had something else that could sell for that card. And I think that's where Cody and Solo Sikoa comes in. Because I think that's going to be your main event at SummerSlam. I think that's the one that people are going to be. I don't know if I'm booking as much as Gunther. I'm a huge mark for the guy. I don't think Gunther Damian Priest is your main event closing SummerSlam. I think it has to be Cody versus Solo Sikoa, and then that might be partially because a lot of us think. I don't want to speak for you guys, but you guys are smart. I think you'll agree. Odds are that's when Roman's making his return.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't happen this past weekend, I didn't think it was. I thought there was a slight possibility, but especially with the way the crowd was chanting. But I was like, it's too soon. It's too soon. Bloodline's at least got to win.
Cost Solo the match?
I don't know. It depends on. You could prolong and put off that Roman Solo match if it looks like he's behind. You know, he's approving of all this. I don't think he should, but I could see them prolonging it. And you know, I mean, there's theories that it's going to be Roman and his team of Bloodline versus Solo and his team of Bloodline. I really don't know. I think there's a few different directions they could go. Right. Because here's the thing. Who really broke up the Bloodline or destroyed their momentum? It wasn't Solo Sikoa. It was Cody Rhodes. So is Roman really going to come back and go after Solo? Or is he going to go after both of them? He's got problems with both of them. So I can see this going.
Wise man.
Well, on top of everything, yes. They hurt the wise man.
Yeah, but that's
Roman, his wise man.
Yeah, but that's the other question. Does Roman really care? I think he will.
Valid question.
But
I think Roman does.
But I could see him having problems with both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, if you really want to make it interesting, you announce ahead of time he's the guest referee, and you don't know which way he's going to sway then.
I think it's going to be Roman, The Rock, and the Usos against
New Bloodline.
Solo, Luanga, right? The New Bloodline versus Old Bloodline at Survivor Series.
The only question,
to me, that should be an elimination match.
I think the only way,
a traditional Survivor Series match, that would be interesting.
No, I think they needed to bring back at least a Survivor Series match because it is called Survivor Series. Otherwise, just call it War Games. I'm going to differ with you on the Rock. I think the Rock has to come back as a heel. I don't think he could be the final boss in the face, especially the way he left it with Cody. If anything, I think it's going to turn out the Rock has been in Solo's ear, hyping him up and building that confidence in him to do what he's doing.
Or, just bring out another Samoan at some point because
isn't there another
they're
one?
all over.
There's another brother, isn't there?
There's another brother. I swear, Rikishi.
Supply of Samoans.
Rikishi never met a condom he thought was worth his time.
Hey, look, Afa and Seeker were the wild Samoans. They weren't the civilized Samoans. So, they didn't hear of birth control.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
We like our women. We like our time with our women like we like our fish raw. Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm putting myself in.
Wow.
I guess they did a lot more Samoan drops than what we saw in the ring, huh?
You better do a rosary or something there, buddy. I need two Hail Marys.
I did listen last week. You did say you were corrupting him, and was he turning you into the good, or was?
Oh no!
But the devil would say that. The devil would say that. Are you turning me, or am I turning you?
Yeah, exactly. Last week he was saying all sorts of reasonable things. Don't let him fool you. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
It's a ruse.
I was gonna say, you could be the Reverend. That doesn't mean you're the Reverend of the good. You could be the Reverend of the dark.
Devon was a reverend.
There's literally, and I'm not joking when I say this, there's literally a church like 5-10 minutes from me that's literally the sign says the Church of the Light and the Dark. It is the weirdest thing, and they've started rebuilding this whole thing, and I was like, is there a satanic church coming up in my community? What the hell is this? And it looks evil from the outside. I should take a photo and send this to you guys because I'm
gonna have to check that out.
I drive by it like at least once every 2 weeks.
They've heard of either one of us.
All right.
All right.
I think that's a good amount of WWE.
You guys want to talk Heatwave? Are we done with WWE or moving over to something else? Where do you want to go next?
I feel like Heatwave was the main event. Although shout out to Kalani Jordan's outfit for holding on for dear life during her match with Sol Ruka, because
see, Rob, your influence.
No,
I watched that damn match and I wasn't staring at anybody having possible wardrobe malfunction.
They had the camera right there, and they had to black it out right at the end.
Maybe
and I knew why they blacked it out
right there.
Maybe I was in front of the TV. Is that what you're saying? No.
Look, I watched the match. I saw the crowd go crazy for. I'm not a fan of either one of them, so maybe that's why. But I thought I would have. I personally would have noticed that, so I must really not like them, or you're really staring a hole through them.
You're jet lagged.
I was in the same time zone, bro.
Trying to help you out, man. I don't know.
I don't need help. I screw myself up enough as it is. Don't help me.
I was gonna say he doesn't need any help.
Oh, what else? Were there any other standout matches from that show?
I mean, the tag team title match was fun, but
yes,
I think Obafemi literally beating the piss out of Wes Lee was something else.
That throw.
Yeah.
And that throw he did, basically a pizza toss or an F. I think somebody called it an F-25 or something.
Something like that. My biggest knock, and it wasn't Kaylana Jordan versus Sol Ruka, because look, they could go. I think that, they're in development to learn how to piece together a good match, and it's not like I'm a freaking expert. That's just my opinion. My biggest problem, and my only main problem with NXT, was, my God, Booker T was fucking drooling over Roxanne Perez on a different level. I wanted to mute. I haven't wanted to mute anything so badly since I had to hear Quinn Charmel saying "All Hail King Booker" 100 times. Oh my freaking God! It's like, bro, tone it down. Especially because he's been like, but he's like always tried to come across as the face, but he's full in on Roxanne Perez. It's like, all right, dude, we got it. You trained the shit out of her. We got it.
He is all about her.
Oh my God.
I didn't see the opening match, but I'm pretty sure he was like that about Jasmine Nix as well early on in the show, because he'd be drooling all over her too.
You know what I'm waiting for? I'm waiting for Charmel to come out with a frying pan and whack him over the head.
Just show up from behind them.
Bang.
I got another friend who's a wrestling fan, and he said the one reason why he struggles with NXT is he thinks Booker T has got to be the worst commentator of all time. He just can't listen to him.
Maybe. But
he's not perfect. So there's some stuff I love. There's some stuff I enjoy about him, but his calling of that match drove me absolutely insane. Like, I really wanted to punch the guy by the end of it. I was so sick of hearing him. Mm-hmm. And that's what he's going for. I get it. But I was like, holy shit, bro, tone it down just a little bit.
I would say, though, to that point, I thought he did a really good job on Tuesday night in that main event, which, as we all knew was going to happen, ended up featuring one Joe Hendry. Our own Devil's Advocate said a few weeks ago, the only thing that would make this TNA NXT thing any worthwhile is if they were getting some wins, because you can't just have people show up and lose all the time. Joe Hendry got the pinfall at the end. So it's his music that ends the show. And Rudy even during the match, it was him and it was him and Trick Williams versus Sean Spears and the new champion, Ethan Page, and he pinned Sean Spears to win the match. And they also made him look strong during the match. But also, Booker T did do one thing that I thought was good, which was early in the match. He's like, he can show up. Well, no, he said he can show up and then get his ass beat. I won't be impressed. He's going to have to show me something. And then he pulled off a string of moves, and Booker T said, oh, okay. I see why they like him. And that was it. That was the whole thing. I was like, okay. If you're gonna build him up by commentary, that's good.
Okay.
But
now that you got that out of your system, and as I'm going back to my rant
about
Booker T, just for one more thing.
And Roxanne?
No, because it didn't end there. Because then Trick Williams came out, and he's fucking wearing the Harlem Heat wannabe tights.
Yes, he did.
And I saw him hit the bookend and the scissor kick, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, can we get off this guy's nuts already? Holy shit. And granted, that Fatal 4-Way was the match of the weekend in my mind, with that women's Money in the Bank, because of this, after you got through the hiccups, beating just behind it.
But
I was like, oh my God, why don't they just call this Booker T Appreciation Night? Holy shit.
I think you got to accept, though, that there's a whole generation of wrestlers that were directly influenced by him.
And that's fair.
That's who they watched when they were old, that age.
Yeah, they were watching WCW on his downfall. Good for them.
And they watched his ascent in WWE. They're all 20. So they were watching him in WWE more than WCW.
They were watching King Booker.
Oh, God.
They saw King Booker. They saw him versus Stone Cold. They saw him versus The Rock. The horrible invasion angle, but they saw him in it. They saw him in the supermarket getting whooped. Like that's the Booker T they started watching, so they know him mostly from WWE.
Well,
Booker T is, you know what the worst part is about Booker T is when you see him quoted on a website and they give it word for word, and you try to follow what he's saying and you can't follow, and you're like, wait, what? What? Those words don't go together. What did he just say?
He must not know a lot of people from Houston. That dude talks like a lot of people I know from Houston.
Well,
and
I don't know how anything gets done there then, because I can't follow a word the man say.
And Jason, you could punch me in the face if what I say is out of line. I also think he's.
Can I take that?
No. This is free reign on Jason would have this one. I think he's definitely been a role model, and for really the Black community that didn't really have a good representation besides Ron Simmons in the wrestling world. Because I know some people say The Rock. The Rock didn't look. I mean, I know he was part Black. We know Rocky Johnson was dead.
But also he looked more Samoan heritage.
Right.
Like he was Samoan.
Booker T was 100%. So I get that. And then you mentioned Joe Hendry. I went and downloaded that and listened to that theme song. I don't get it. I don't get how this like you said, it was stuck in your head. I'm like, this sounds
only the opening. I think that's what it is for most people. It's the first 6 bars of Joe Hendry's theme are stuck in your head. I never knew that there was more to it until
that's fair, because it's literally a minute long, and I'm like, this hit the top 40 in the UK because literally it sounds like a bad 90s pop song, like
that's
dance
probably
clubs.
why.
I guess because and I'm like, I like the I Believe in Joe Hendry part. That part I'm okay with, but then when they start going on like every place they believe in him, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'll tell you whose theme song stuck in my head is Will Ospreay's. I'm actually
yes.
I actually randomly start playing it throughout the day. I don't know what it is about that song. But yeah, Joe Hendry. Let's see where they go with this. I'm intrigued.
I saw a tweet this morning that said Joe Hendry is more over in NXT than he is in TNA.
Mm-hmm.
Just presentation. I mean, that crowd was all for him, man.
I was actually
TNA really like him.
I was actually curious about that. Does TNA's tapings have more of an audience than NXT? Because NXT, I feel like you get a couple hundred people in there, and I feel like TNA seats more. But I get NXT's got a wider viewing audience as far as television.
Yeah, and I think that NXT crowd, it's kind of like it feels like the old Impact crowd in that they show up, they're in it 100%. They're in it. I don't know if the TNA crowd right now is at that same level yet. Hopefully they will be, but get them on TV, like real TV.
So, all right. And then before we go over to AEW, I noticed there was a big signing, which actually kind of goes into the face of I don't know if it's considered a smack in the face of the AEW, but who wants to lead this one in? Go ahead.
So Stephanie Vacour. If you watched the last AEW pay-per-view, she was the one that wrestled Mercedes Moné and essentially carried her through the match. And halfway through the match, and Jason and I discussed this at length last week, so I'm not going to go through it again, but real quick, the crowd turned on Mercedes Moné halfway through, and they were cheering Stephanie Vacour. She's a great wrestler. She's was a champion in CMLL and New Japan. And what we found out today is that she's signing with WWE. And it's coming across as there's a mixed reaction, and I'll tell you why. And you guys are probably, and as soon as I say it, you'll probably both shake your heads. She basically went to CMLL and New Japan and said, I'm leaving, and that's it. She didn't do what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to lose the belts on the way out the door. You're supposed to give notice. You're supposed to drop the belts. You're supposed to do it the right way. And a lot of purists are complaining that her original reasoning was that she was having personal issues and she needed to leave. And then it turns out the personal issue was that she got a WWE contract. So yeah, Jason made the money sign. So a lot of people are looking at her like, you should have done it the right way. You should have dropped the belts to your next opponents. You should have finished your commitments because New Japan, I think she has a match coming up or had a match signed for 5 days from now, and she bailed on them to sign with. And shame on WWE for not letting her finish her commitments either. They shouldn't have done that, especially since they're talking about this open door working with all these other companies. It's really not the way you get New Japan on your side. If you're going to try to work with them at some point, I don't think that's a good idea. But
can I ask a question? What New Japan title did she walk away? What? She dropped it to Mercedes.
I don't.
That
maybe
was the pure
strong
one, yeah. Oh, the strong title. That's right.
Then,
Yeah.
then it's the CM.
It's the CMML is what I'm reading.
Yeah.
CMLL titles, but she, like I said, she had a New Japan match coming up in 5 days. I think that she bailed out.
She's got the CMLL tag titles and a singles title.
Yeah.
There.
Right.
So she's she's a double champion there. That's a big deal.
Right.
And she was basically already being advertised. She'd already been advertised.
Right. And in Japan, it's really a big no-no to pull out of a match so close to it unless you're injured. So for her to just pull out and say, I'm signing somewhere else, a lot of people are very disappointed. The other thing I heard was that she really never had any interest in AEW. It was always acknowledged that it was going to be a one-off. Mm-hmm. And they did show interest in her, but her dream was a sign with WWE. So AEW really never had a shot.
And I'm reading on and it's actually an MSN.com article of all things, that outfit called Record, which I believe it's a Mexican-based media, reported that she had offers from AEW and WWE. So I don't know that necessarily it was WWE only. WWE might have been a dream. It sounded like she had offers from both companies. And
but what I read was that AEW was going to allow her to work for CMLL and New Japan. They were going to make concessions. Like they were going to acknowledge the fact that she had the CMLL championship, and they were going to let her continue to defend it as long as they wanted to. And she was going to be given time to work in New Japan. So they were going to give her that flexibility. But the other thing I read, like I said, is that her dream was always to sign with WWE, and AEW really never had a shot. As soon as from WWE, she was taking it.
Well, and one of the articles I'm reading is saying that one of them, it might have been even both companies, understood that she was interested in working for a North American company and they would let her go if that was the case. I don't know that we don't know the whole story here. Because,
very true.
Yeah, because Vince had a reputation of letting guys, for the most part, finish their dates before they debuted. We don't know if WWE is aware of this, or it could have been that WWE said, look, finish your dates, do the honorable thing. And she might have came back and said, I appreciate that. I'm not interested.
There could have been a reason.
It could have been her call.
Yeah, I mean, right.
We don't know.
I read that CMLL and New Japan were like, we'll let you out. If you want to go back, you go to the United States, go right ahead. Yeah. But do it the right way. And she just decided to vacate the titles and sign with WWE.
It's interesting though, because depending on who tells the story, it's positioned as WWE doing something against these promotions. Of course, that's Encyclopedia's buddy Uncle Dave there saying things to that effect. I don't think that would be the case. Right? No, but I don't think that would be the case, because if anything, in this era of WWE, feels like they would be the ones to say, no, finish your dates. We can start promoting you. Because I feel like they even did that with Julia. Before she came over, she still had dates to finish, and she finished those. So, yeah, it's weird. It does make me think that something else happened that we don't know.
Yeah, it's very possible. It's just,
and we haven't heard her talk about it.
It's not a good light. It's you're supposed to do the honorable thing. You finish your contracts. You drop your titles to whomever the company decides. So I don't know if it was her or WWE, but it left a lot of purists with a bad taste in their mouth. So
but she's not talking, so you might not know until she decides.
It's not the biggest deal in the world.
Oh, yeah.
She didn't kill somebody, but at the same time, it's a tradition, right? You're going to sign somewhere else, you drop the title. I mean, that was the big contention with Bret Hart, right? That was the Montreal Screwjob in general, right? He had creative control, and he wouldn't drop the belt where they wanted him to, and there was a whole, there's a whole lot of issues there that, about doing the right thing.
We can't trust.
Right, do the right thing.
We can't trust that you'll do this.
His idea of the right thing and Vince's were two different things. So,
Are we more in a world where, and it's not always the case, but we're more in a world where people's should be focusing more, on their happiness and what's going to make them happy. And there are places that are open to letting people go, knowing that maybe this isn't the right fit for them and for that individual. Are we in a world now that includes wrestling, and the time-honored tradition is going to become a thing of the past? And I'm not saying I'm playing devil's advocate right now, because I agree with you. I agree. Drop the belts in a proper fashion, but with mental health and people's happiness.
We're talking
being such
30
a focus.
days though, one way or the other. I mean, if I'm telling you, if I'm her and I want to leave CMML, I'm like, let's get the next opportunity, get me a challenger. I'm going to drop the belts. I'm going to do the right thing.
We don't know the whole story
30 days.
It sounds like the company said that they were okay with letting her go, so that's on them as well.
And now they're saying, well, how could she leave? Yeah, there is that.
We don't know the whole story.
I think, and your scenario, Rob, that's all things being equal, everything going the way it should, good relationship between her and that company. She's going to say, hey, we talked about it. I'm ready. Let me know when you want me to drop this before I leave. Or even then, I talked to Triple H and he said, listen, if you can't do it for another month, that's fine. They'll let me still drop the title. I don't know. Something tells me there was, because it feels like that's a turnaround, because you're not going to put the two titles on her if they had a bad relationship, are they?
Right, or if they thought she was leaving.
Yeah.
The person who's infamous, I wonder if you guys know, if you think of, real quick, if you think in wrestling history, there was one man who I'm thinking of right now who had a commitment in a different organization and did not keep his commitments and immediately moved to another organization and won their heavyweight title. Think about it for a minute. Very famous story.
Wait, was it Flair?
No.
Okay, because I was wondering if it was
Flair.
No,
the company made the call on Flair.
Yeah, good guess. Anthony, any guess?
Okay, run that by me again.
All right, so there is a wrestler who was wrestling for a large organization, who had committed to a long-term round of matches, and suddenly just decided to leave without notice, joined a new organization, and immediately won their world heavyweight title.
New one. Oh, all right. And won the title. That's okay, because I was going to say Mike Awesome until you
Quit by Telegram. That might help.
Telegram?
Telegram.
Oh, geez.
All right, 5 more seconds. I'm gonna 5 more seconds.
Dig into the crates here.
I'm not going to come up with it in 5 seconds.
Okay. It is Hulk Hogan. Greg Gagne famously tells the story how Hogan hadn't won the title from Nick Bockwinkel, and he was planned to do dates all the way through, I think it was like September, and he was supposed to do dates all the way through Christmas. The AWA had him signed. Vince McMahon called him and said, come to me right now. Don't finish your commitments. I got plans for you and for the belt on you. And he left, didn't tell Greg Gagne, didn't tell Vern Gagne. Sent them a telegram that he wasn't coming back. And Greg Gagne called him and, hey, look, man, you want to leave, but finish your dates. Like, we have you booked till Christmas. We have and the AWA only worked certain parts of the year. So this was like their big time of the year. And Hogan was their biggest star. And he said, Vince McMahon's paying me more not to. And then in that January, he won the World Heavyweight title.
I think there's more to that story, because Vern refused to put the belt on him for the longest time until it sounded like he was ready to go.
There are other sides to that story, but that is what happened, though. He did quit without warning and left.
Yeah.
And Hogan's never denied it.
Yeah, and that show me the money. I mean, look, I question, for a long time we've questioned certain legends really going to AEW, and like, you got Jericho and Copeland saying that it's the greatest company, what have you. But sometimes you look at the people that sign at AEW, and it's like, this company is not being looked at favorably right now. They're not doing as well as they make themselves out to be. Why would you sign there? Well, that's why.
Right, but again, we're talking about the time-honored, back then, even worse, even more, the time-honored tradition of working your dates.
All right, well,
any book you read about any wrestler from that time always said if you were leaving the territory, you always gave your notice, and then they booked you on your way out. You didn't just walk out the door.
Well, but there's been we had a more recent occasion with that. Not Stephanie Vicor. Mercedes Moné and Naomi never dropped those women's tag team belts. They left the belts in the office and walked right out.
Mm-hmm. And we still really don't know why.
She claims she didn't like the way she was. Mercedes recently said it had to do with the way she was being talked to and treated that way, and she was like, "Why am I staying here when I'm being treated this way? This isn't right the way they're treating us." And that's the only thing we've heard, and there hasn't been any denials. Probably because the two people she had the issue with got their own problems to worry about.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just figured I'd bring that up. To me, I was surprised you didn't know that, because that's been bandied about a bunch of times.
Once you said it, it rang a bell. I didn't know he was booked for another 3 months.
Yeah. Telegram. That's crazy.
I mean,
do you still have those?
Well, back then, this was the 80s we're talking about. The other thing I heard was the only person that defected to the WWE that actually gave their notice the proper way and worked out his dates was Bobby Heenan.
Really?
Jesse the Body, Gene Okerlund, all those people that were in the AWA that left to go to WWF just left.
But Bobby Heenan said.
And Bobby Heenan was the only one that said, "I'm going to WWF on this date. I'll work my last 2 weeks like I'm supposed to." He was the only one. I think that's interesting. It goes to say a lot about Bobby Heenan. Like his character is one thing, but him being a man and doing what's right, irregardless of money or whatever, he wanted to make sure. Say what you want about Vern Gagne. He was cheap. He was short-sighted, but he trained the who's who of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And they all owed him some kind of debt, and a lot of them just took what they needed and left. And that's what I think the point was. Is like, I think Greg, of course, being his son, and all, still was like, you do the honors, right? You do the right thing, and then you go. They couldn't stop you. There were no contracts back then. Remember, this is before we had all these contracts. So I always found that interesting. Those final days of the AWA to me were fascinating, but that's me. I'm a wrestling history kind of guy, so.
And I'm going to take this the opposite way. I think that might be a testament to what people thought of Vern Gagne, that many people.
He did rub a lot of people the wrong way. I'm not arguing that at all. I mean, Hogan started selling T-shirts, and
I know that story.
And Vern wanted all the money, and didn't want to share any of the merchandising with. And then Hogan was huge in Japan, and Vern didn't want him wrestling in Japan, so he was stopping Hogan from making money left and right. So I don't have an issue with that. You should be able to make the money. He's making all his money, and he wouldn't put the belt on because he didn't think he was a wrestler.
Right.
And to me, like, how short-sighted could you be? He could have had Hulkamania, but he couldn't get past his own prejudice. And, that's why you still had, like, Baron von Raschke and the Crusher wrestling in their 60s, looking like pathetic old men, while Vince had all the young guys and he cherry-picked all the best from all the territories. And on one hand you have to respect him for that, on the other hand you have to hate him. And for me, it's hard because I was a territory guy. I thought wrestling was better when it was territories. But again, that's a whole other story for a whole other podcast. But
yeah, I get what you're saying. I think the other thing, and it's even more commonplace now than even back then. People, to a fault, tend to sometimes stay too loyal to a company when the company, in actuality, is not loyal to you. And I think that's plenty of cases of it there.
Yeah.
It's Bobby Heenan was loyal to the company. The rest of the guys weren't loyal to the company, and I think it's probably because a lot of it was the company wasn't necessarily loyal to them.
Well, Bobby Heenan felt, and I read his book, so I remember he felt like that's where he got his start.
I read his book too. Yeah.
And he felt like he owed Vern that much. No matter, regardless of what happened over the years, that's just the way he felt. And a lot of other guys didn't feel that way. And whatever, you're entitled to your feelings. It's just, I'm curious to see if this Stephanie Vacour story ever comes out, because I would love to know what happened behind the scenes. Was it amicable, or was it she just decided, I've got this opportunity and I'm taking it, so here's your belts.
Yeah.
So
it'd be interesting. And I mean, she's probably not going to make an appearance right away.
I think it seems not to be. From what I read, right? I think she's starting in NXT.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she can start at any point, I guess. I mean, I don't know how much seasoning she actually needs, but
not judging by that last performance.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Anthony, if you get a chance to watch that would be one of the matches I'd recommend. I know you were.
Hey. Don't call me out on not be watching Forbidden Door. I said beforehand I probably wasn't going to watch it.
Well, I understand. All I was saying is, if you have the chance to watch, that's one of the matches I would watch, because
I don't have anything booked. Yeah, I don't have anything booked for my side hustle job right now this weekend, so maybe I'll be catching up on a lot of things. We'll see.
Well, thinking of AEW things,
mm-hmm.
I did not watch Dynamite this week. I am proudly saying that. I'm defiantly saying that I did not watch Dynamite this week. However,
but by the way,
I am well aware. Oh,
before you go into that, my phone, Big Brother, is listening, because in my Facebook feed came up, Kalani Jordan suffers wardrobe malfunction during NXT Heatwave match. Thanks, Jason.
Hey, it's part of my religion to give, and I've granted you the gift of,
or to take. So go ahead. You were going.
Go ahead. Sorry. You guys should kick me off this show.
I broke him. All right.
No, I did not watch Dynamite this week. I just didn't get a chance to. However, I was very aware of how the show ended. And don't ask me what their AEW World Champion is up to, but I know everything that went on with the AEW Women's Champion. And it seems like we've hit that turning point in the story of Timeless Toni Storm, which I believe everybody has been pretty entertained by over the past, year and a half now she's been doing that? And it finally hit a fevered pitch with Mariah May turning on her, as she now has the number one contender spot, I guess. I think that was an amazing segment.
Did you see it? Or did you
read
segment?
It? Yes, I saw the segment, but because my entire feed was that. In first thing in the morning was Toni Storm and Mariah May. Very well done.
This is my problem with this week's AEW. It's a very good show. The Toni Storm bleeding to me was totally like I wanted it. Like that. We all knew Mariah May was going to turn. We didn't know when. And when she did it, it caught everybody off guard. Mm-hmm. And it was great. And the fact that Toni Storm was bleeding like a stuck pig was cool. My problem is we had two other guys bleed earlier in the show. Hangman Page and Danielson were both bleeding. And I'm like, blood serves a purpose in wrestling, but not every match. And there was no reason we didn't need Hangman Page and Bryan Danielson to become a bloodbath. and Danielson was bleeding like a stuck pig. And who I felt bad for was Martha Hart came in the ring to congratulate him and give him the belt, and she was like kind of like here, and like she kind of like patted him on the back, and like he kind of gave her like a half hug, but he was trying to keep his head away from her and his arm was hurt and his neck was bothering him, so it was like the most awkward interaction I think I've ever seen. Because not only didn't he want to get blood on her, but he couldn't raise his one arm and he couldn't really turn his head, so it was like the hunchback was trying to hug Martha, and I felt bad for her because I was like, yeah, I wouldn't want to touch him either. He's disgusting. He's all covered in blood and sweat, and I really enjoyed the fact that Jeff Jarrett was involved, but Jeff Jarrett was involved in it, he didn't get involved in the match. He made the 3 count, which I really kind of liked. I'm glad they didn't have him win the tournament. All that, I would have hated that part.
Yeah,
but I like
Conrad Thompson was calling for that for the last several weeks.
No, that should have happened last year if they were going to do that, not this year. And it was great. I mean, the Mariah May turn was great, and the blood was perfect. I mean, it looked brutal. And Toni Storm looked a mess. And then Mariah started with like kissing her, rubbing her face in her blood, and I was just like, "Ew, cool."
The image of her with like half the blood smeared on her face, that was just wow.
I mean, it was well done, and it would have been even better if we hadn't seen any blood during that show, except for that.
That is a very fair critique. Because just for me, all I saw was that, and the image is stuck with me.
Yeah, right. I mean, and Toni Storm was selling it. She was almost like half crying, like half in pain, like half like part shock, part pain, part crying. Like she sold it.
Yeah.
Like she looked like she had no idea. Like you're like, well done.
Yeah, I really think that arc with her has been one of the best things they've done, and I don't know how much of it was just her driving it, or if they really just got the machine behind her to let it, to work on it consistently. But I think we all talked about it. When she first switched it, none of us thought it was going to last that long. It was just interesting, but
it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then it became interesting, and then it became must watch.
And it is like, okay, what's she going to do this time?
Well, it's commitment to the character, right?
Yeah.
It's commitment to the character. When you totally commit, like the Undertaker would have been an awful character if Mark Callis would have half-assed it.
Yes.
Right? You got to sell it. You got to be in 100%. That's the problem we have with a lot of people who are trying to play these characters. You can tell their heart's not in it, or it's not. Yeah. She found her niche, and she ran with it full bore. And, the crazier it got, the more we enjoyed it. I mean, who throws shoes? And then like Renee like dodging shoes and stuff, and you're like, she's throwing shoes.
What are they doing?
What are you doing?
But even the story with them, because was it Luther never liked Mariah May? I recall this when she first came into the picture. Luther was the one person who wanted nothing. So they teased that, and they did that consistently even up until a month ago. And then with the whole Mina Shirakawa thing, they teased her going over to her friend, and instead she brought them all together, and now everybody's on the same page and happy to be there. And they did the promo the other week where she was like, "No, I want to be in your bosom." It was like, wow, why is this meaningful? This shouldn't be as meaningful as it is, but it's a really cool promo. And damn, got us.
I love the fact that Serena Deeb came out and gave this very heartfelt like promo, and Toni Storm was like, "I don't care." So you had cancer. What do I care? Or whatever her problem was. She's like, "I don't care."
Yeah.
Like, wow. The fans don't care, and neither does she.
And I think that's the funny thing. Like, it was still a big deal, and you forget Toni Storm is not the character. Timeless Toni Storm is not a nice person.
Not a nice person.
I mean, oh man, yeah, that was good stuff. Like I said, you mentioned the rest of the show. I had no idea. All I know is I want to see that match.
I mean, the other problem with this show is, and I'll throw this out to you guys. Next week on Dynamite, we're getting MJF and Will Ospreay. Why would you put that on free TV?
Unless you're going to do one of those funny finishes, but
that's a WWE thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I would have guessed that originally, and that was what I was going to counter with. And I thought about, I was like, wait, no, this is AEW. They wouldn't do that.
That's very true.
Like, I think the problem is with the was in England. Is it All In? I think that's the problem. Is they kind of paint themselves into a corner because, like, who, Will Ospreay's not the champion, obviously the world champion, but he's got to have an opponent. So is he going to lose to MJF this week, and they're going to have a rematch in England? Like, I don't know where they're going with this.
It's weird.
But you would have thought they would have saved this for England. I mean, that's where Will Ospreay's from. But I guess if you don't want him to lose, maybe MJF beats him by shenanigans next week, and the rematch is in London. But then you have MJF lose already. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand what's going on right now.
Did Daniel Garcia come back?
No, Daniel Garcia. They sold it that he might be out forever. Okay. MJF gave him a tombstone pile driver off the top rope. So yeah. Will Ospreay basically said he's crippled.
So that does give them some way, because he took out two people that night. He took out Garcia and he took out Menard. They do have an avenue to cause MJF a match without.
He's half a person, Matt Menard. Come on.
I know. It can't be Matt Menard. It would have to be Garcia that cost them the match. But they could cost them a match against Will Ospreay and set them on something, him and Garcia, to have their thing, and then Will Ospreay gets into that main event again somehow. I don't know.
I mean, you really want to have Will Ospreay lose twice within a span of a month?
If he's in the main event, he would be defending the international title in the main event.
Right, and
he could win.
And if he loses, though, this week against MJF, you're going to have him lose twice?
No, but Garcia could cause MJF the match.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I don't know.
You could have him and Garcia have their thing and blow that.
Does anybody really want to? I mean, I don't know. Okay.
I don't know, because after a beating like that, now I wonder, would people want to see that? Because after the beating Toni Storm just got, I want to see her and Mariah May fight. But then again, there was so much time invested in that.
Right. I mean, are we really going to see Daniel Garcia back in 2 weeks after taking a pile driver off the top rope?
God, I hope not. I mean, you'd see people usually kick out of it.
Well, if you're in AEW, yeah. So... You kick out of the 1 count and then
start dancing.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Hopefully they can keep that momentum going. I do feel like there are some things they've been building up well in AEW, and I just hope they keep that going. Little victories.
I hope so.
TV is difficult, man. Writing TV ain't easy.
I'm not saying it's easy, but there's got to be a plan in place. Like there should be somebody in the back saying, like, where do we think Will Ospreay is going to be in 6 months and a year and a year and a half? What's his trajectory, and where do we think Daniel Garcia is going to be? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's a lot of that going on. I think Tony Khan comes in and goes, "Oh, hey, there's Will Ospreay. Let's put him in a match." And somebody jumps in, and like there are some angles, like you said, working. So somebody's doing some of that, and then the other part of it is just like it's like half angle, half dream match. So like maybe Tony Khan's like, I'll book half and you book the other half. I don't know.
Like Wikipedia is still
strangely quiet.
It looks like your heart is still in Toronto. Maybe it's because of that damned hat.
Maybe he left his brain there.
Maybe he's so far behind he doesn't have anything to say because he hasn't watched this stuff yet.
That's fair.
All right.
Oh, we should have had you watch that segment while we were talking just to see your facial reactions.
Sometimes I think we should just do a live watch along of Dynamite or something.
Well, I mean, we could watch segments of shows and comment on them. if you wanted to, we could do that. Like, hey, this week this is what happened. Let's all watch it together. And
for it.
but we, that would involve some planning on our part. So we should talk about this offline.
Let's get to the next part of the show where we pull up spreadsheets for the fans.
Oh, Jesus.
We have any other topics we want to hit, or we wrap it up?
I'm good.
I will wrap up, but
wrap it up.
Oh yeah.
Wrap it up, B.
Oh yeah, I'm the host, aren't I?
Yep.
We thank you guys for watching. We are part of the Sports Frenzy Podcast Network. So Sports Frenzy Pod on Twitter, Sports Frenzy Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you guys for welcoming back so warmly on my return from the Great White North. And we will be back next week with another stirring edition of The Good, the Bad, and the Encyclopedia. Peace.
Get rid of that hat.
I will.
Get rid of that hat.
Next week.
Okay.
Okay, goodbye.